Yeah, hi people, more innovation back here again as always under as usual. Yeah, I'm going to discuss briefly astrologically, bluntly put, simpy placements. You can tell based on the thumbnail of this video. Now, for those of you that don't know what a simp is either a man or a woman, but more commonly the former, so a man or men that are generally speaking mentally compromised and or weakish to the point where they hypothetically allow themselves to be taken advantage of by women and to be treated like a doormat or even worse, or like a human toilet, mental toilet outright. Um, Now, generally speaking, for guys, because this is the reason in general. I've taken a couple of examples from acquaintances and whatnot and clients, but obviously I'm not going to discuss that or divulge any private information. Anyways, unsurprisingly, for example, one of the guys that I knew, um, he had Venus in Aries, and yeah, that is a typical, bluntly put, simp placement. I wouldn't go so far as to call him a mega simp, but that's due to his other personality characters or characteristics dumbing things down a bit. But bottom line is that he was still taken advantage of by women up to considerable extents. And he seemingly just willingly went along with it. But of course, again, the world doesn't work that way. Now, let me explain that. For guys in general, guys that are born under Venus and Aries, understand that these guys, by default, in someone's natal chart, for men, the moon and Venus will indicate what kind of women they like. And for women, it's Saturn and Mars. Now, the moon more would indicate purely the mentality of a woman. Venus would indicate more her sensuality that the guy in question is attracted to. Now, one of the weakest positions that Venus can have is being in Aries. Imagine Venus being in Aries and it's going retrograde on top of it, which essentially does double damage. So you can see where that comes from. A guy with such a placement is just utterly going to be taken advantage of by women, and he will seemingly go along with it. It's not that he's going along with it, it just naturally happens. The guy essentially behaves in such a way that, because it's one of his characteristics, that he essentially, it's like he submits himself to abuse. And there's nothing he can do about it. He's just essentially a sheepish, passive kind of guy, taken to extremist of levels, the extremist of levels. And that will naturally attract women that are the givers rather than the receivers. So, bluntly put, these crude bitches that like taking advantage of men and mistreating men and enjoy doing so because they have adverse placements and yeah, the rest is will be history in such a situation. And that's how you see a situation where, for example, a woman does something as offensive as slap a man. I've heard of cases where women do this stuff in public, even like literally slapping a guy in public, literally humiliating and abusing someone like that. I mean, especially as a man, I mean, normal guys that are watching this, guys that are level-headed, guys that are not compromised or suffer from the aforementioned placement. Again, the thought alone is laughable, including, let alone to me. I mean, I don't even know what to say. A woman can even look at me in a way I don't like, and oh boy, I mean, what? Just I will put her in her place quicker than I breathe. No joke, not hypothetically, literally. But again, at the same time, I know that these kind of guys, there is nothing you can do in such a position or in such a situation. When I had to deal with indescribable levels of hardship while I was growing up, at some point things got so bad that all the negative energy that I was afflicted with or that I suffered from also brought about these situations. So I know what it's like, in a manner of speaking, to be in these guys' their shoes. Because I also had those situations of hideously ugly women and women that are just that you wouldn't touch with a 12-foot pole, both literally as well as figuratively and vice versa, that you would that these kind of women did stuff like threaten me, I'm gonna slap you, I'm gonna this, I'm gonna that. Just ignored it, in that moment. I was just like, I had like a yeah, fuck off mentality. Because I knew that it was the energy. I was like, listen, I know why this is happening. You're not important. The situation isn't important. I know what the root cause is of the situation and the problem. So I focus purely on that. Of course, as I am, like I said, a woman literally. No woman in this world even dares to look at me, literally in a way I don't like, because before she can even muster the thought, I will pretty much give her like an assassin's look, and she'll immediately fold. I'm not boasting for myself, but I don't care who thinks I'm boasting for myself. Now, um, anyways, referring to the placement, like I said, that's what happens, okay? And this is quite common. And the house, of course, that the aforementioned placement is in will determine what part of life. For example, the third house in astrology, Gemini's house, will stand for everyday life. The 10th house, for example, would stand for authority figures, obviously. So Capricorn's house. The ninth house would stand for faraway lands, essentially anything foreign. So, for example, imagine a guy that has Venus in Aries going retrograde and it's in Sagittarius's house, so the ninth house. Those are the typical guys you see that go overseas compared to where they were born. For example, a guy is from Belgium. And so a guy like that, all of a sudden you'll find a guy like that in some third world hellhole in Africa, for example, somewhere. And, the guy all of a sudden is married to a woman there. The woman mistreats him, yells at him, screams at him, and he just sits there and takes it essentially. She bleeds him dry of all of his financial resources, and it just goes on. The typical, what like people cheekily like to refer to as Western simp, going to the third world to pick up women and whatnot. Usually, this is more common for men, obviously. For a woman, it would not have the same effect. It would have the opposite effect in general, but not in a good way. But I'm not going to get into that. It's more applicable to men than to women. But yes, even women simp. And an example, for example, regarding a woman would be a woman that was born under Mars in Aries, for example, going retrograde, or Mars in Libra. A woman like that will, as the placement states, essentially be the victim of abuse. A woman like that will have the characteristic of just plain and simply inviting abuse, inviting aggression. And she'll naturally attract a guy that treats her that way, and she'll just sit there and take it. And it's almost like she enjoys it. To any sensible person, it would seem like the person is insane, but you need to just at superficial levels, obviously. But when you look further, you look at everything in detail, then you'll understand why the person is the way they are. And yeah, these are just examples of why you see people act that way, and you think to yourself, how can someone like that? For example, the person is successful in one area of life, the person is financially well off, or the person is well developed, or something similar, person is highly intellectual, and then you're thinking to yourself, how can someone like that, someone that has such a laughably simpy attitude, be so smart to the point where they are either financially successful or just overall successful in other areas of life to begin with? It's so contradictory. Yeah, because you look at it in a black and white manner, but obviously the world is anything but black and white. There are, hypothetically speaking, never-ending shades of gray in between. Um, and yeah, I'm gonna close off by giving myself as an example. Obviously, I'm not a simp, nor was I even back when I was growing up and referring to my natural personality. I was born under the moon in Aries, not good in my specific case. And Venus in Virgo, also not good. Both the moon is neutral in Aries in general, but in my particular case, it was not the best. It was quite horrific, honestly, based on detailed look at the placement and whatnot. Venus by default is not good in Virgo, especially in someone's natal chart. Now, pertaining specifically to the kind of women I used to like naturally, before I practiced the occult and my energy essentially, turned me into the perfect, hypothetically speaking, perfect human being by doing away with all the negative traits of my personality, which obviously took years of exposing myself to extreme energy and whatnot, or energy to the extremist, better said. Um, just from a neutral perspective, my bare bone personality, yeah, the moon being in Aries stood for the fact that I, by nature, like aggressive women. And I noticed that about myself when I was growing up. I liked aggressive women, women that essentially showed hostility towards me, not necessarily in the way of physical assault, but emotional hostility. Let's just put it that way. And Venus only added more fuel to the fire by um, making it so that I was also attracted to women that criticized me heavily. So you see, put those two together, and it's like, okay, so the natural OG Moreno liked bitchy women that put him down and treated him like crap or heavily criticized him. Yeah, unfortunately, I noticed that about myself when I was growing up, like I said, and I really did not like it one bit, and I'll explain in a second why. But let's focus on that first. I noticed that, for example, when dealing with the aforementioned women, woman calling me worthless or a woman calling me can't do anything right, etc., and showing emotional aggression towards me, I noticed that it turned me on, as in I started seriously feeling attracted to the person, especially sexually. And I did not like that one bit. Why? Because I knew that it wasn't the logical part of me, knew that it's not mentally healthy to be attracted to someone like that. Now, and here it comes, because for someone else, the person is not going to respond, and you're going to be like, wow, that guy, one hell of a simp. In my case, I actively suppressed these feelings. Why? Because adjacent the moon in Aries, I was born also under the sun and Mercury in Libra. Now, especially Mercury and Libra, Mercury is one's mind in this context, and Libra stands for peace, balance, harmony, equilibrium, etc., all the good stuff. So yeah, and Mercury functions well in Libra in general. So it stood for the fact that I was mentally level-headed. I had a good head on my shoulders naturally, to say the least, let alone now, obviously. But my point is that that's why my mind immediately recognized it as in, listen, you might feel this way, but it is not mentally healthy, to say the least, to be attracted to someone like that. You should be attracted to someone that to nice women. You should be attracted to nice girls, okay? Someone that is actually an asset to your life as opposed to the opposite. Not someone that is like some walking, talking version of cancer, at least to you personally. So that's what I did essentially. Throughout my thingy, my childhood, I suppressed these feelings. I was like, no, 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 no. Okay. I don't care how bluntly put horny I am for some bitch that tries to talk down to me, but it's not mentally healthy. So I essentially forced myself to like normal women, despite the fact that they didn't really do anything for me. Um, and I suppressed any feelings I had for any of the aforementioned bitches, bluntly put. So yeah, those are examples. Okay, when you see guys like these and women like these, then yeah, that is the highliest of likeliest of cases. If you see someone naturally act that way, and you're just thinking to yourself, how does someone like this function? And that's how. Of course, again, pertaining to giving myself as an example, so this was lifetimes ago. Are you kidding me? I mean, that was the natural OG me, which is prehistoric. That person is like died centuries ago. So yeah, there you go.